Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at this Toshiba RT-S702D radio cassette recorder. I know very little about it, so it's going to be quite good fun having a look inside and seeing what it's all about. I bought it about 18 months ago I guess, and I've been dying to work on it and share it with you guys on the channel. Finally got the opportunity to do that today, so we'll take a look inside and give it what desperately needs to be some kind of service, I would imagine. I just think it's super cool looking. It's really kind of ugly, but at the same time quite intriguing with its design. I haven't seen anything else that really looks like this, and I haven't really seen any for sale before nor since either, so it's a pretty rare machine. I can't find out anything online about it, so if you do know anything about the history of these models, or if maybe you owned one yourself, then do please let me know in the comments. I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of the features on this then. So in no particular order, you've got your left and right, so stereo recording condenser microphones on the side. With regard to the radio, you've got your 4-band, so you've got FM, shortwave, medium and long wave via a master dial on the front, and you've also got your fine tuning for the shortwave as well, which is quite a nice feature. You've got a master selection switch for your radio and tape, and then you've got your mono stereo, and indeed a stereo wide mode as well, which is pretty cool. And with regard to the tone, you've got a single tone part, which is just literally from low to high. You also have a volume control as well, which is a master one for both channels, but it does have a built-in loudness control, so I'm guessing that gives it more oomph, more of a low pass filter at the bottom end, and gives it a bit more thump and a bit more kind of presence at lower volumes, so that's quite nice. Also, you've got externally mounted speaker outputs and a headphone socket as well, which is easy to get to just there on the front panel. And then you've got your LEDs for your power status, tuning to show that you've got a decent radio signal, and indeed an FM stereo indicator as well. So I think what we'll do is give it a quick tour, see if we can't get this thing working, and then see what we need to do today. So let's get on with it then. Our first thing I'll do is look at the radio. And I've just turned the lights off real quick so we can get a decent clear FM signal up here. And we'll go on there to radio. In fact, I'll turn the volume to minimum first. And then radio. Alright, let's see what we've got.
Visit aviva.co.uk. Saturday the 24th and Sunday.
Oh, well that's good news then, because I didn't think the stereo would probably work on this. I figured it might have drifted a little bit over the years, but that's great that the stereo light's coming on as well. So with regard to the tape though, I think that's a different kettle of fish altogether. Whilst we've got a really good mechanism there, and that door's opening a treat, it looks like an absolute, well, it's a horror story in there. It's filthy, it's absolutely covered in dust and grime, and there's been no tapes that would have been played in that in many years. So let's just see if it does anything. We'll press play. Alrighty. Well, there's the motor. You can hear the motor. Rewind. Nah. Fast forward. Alright. So I think it's fairly obvious to say that the belts have gone on that. So yeah, there we go then. Right, so a couple of things to do then really. One is to get it apart. We'll have a look inside. If the outside is anything to go by, it's going to be absolutely grotty as anything in there. Yeah, we'll just check the radio over. I think, as I say, the stereo light was working okay, so we shouldn't have to have a look at that today. We'll just get the Mech out, give that a decent clean, a service, and it really is going to need some kind of clean and service. And we'll get the belts on there, get that sorted. And then we'll give the whole chassis as best a clean as we can, see if we can wipe it all up and chrome up the edges of the handles and the aerial, and just make it a whole lot more presentable. Right, okay, enough jibber jabber. Let's get this on the towel of destiny and crack it open. But just before we do crack it open, I was quite surprised, as I say, that the stereo and everything was still lined up after all these years. And I went to just double check it, and would you believe it's not working now? So we've got 3 LEDs just here. One is for the actual power supply, which we've got, which is great, the red one. We've then also got a tuning one. If I just turn this up a touch, and you'll hear, or you'll see the tuning light come and go. I'll turn the volume back down for copyright reasons, but there's a little green LED to show that it's tuning. But even though we are in, there's mono, and then stereo, if I sweep through, you can see the tuning light coming on. You'll see the tuning light coming on and off and on and off and on and off and on. So it's picking up stations, look.
Yeah, if you listen to Graham Rogers.
Yeah, but that stereo is no longer working, weirdly. So just as well we double checked that. I think it must just be marginal, and we just need to make a little tweak probably to the pilot signal just to line that back up again. So apologies, we've got the lights are out while I was just testing the radio and showing you these LEDs. And anyway, enough of that, let's get it open after all. So it looks like we've got 3 things to do. We'll align the radio, we'll service the mech and give this thing a darn good clean. Right, here we go then. So here we go with the RT-S702D from Toshiba then. Right, my first time inside one of these. Like I say, it's the only one I've ever seen or worked on, in fact. So it looks like we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly 8 screws. Nothing inside the battery compartment, so let's get these out. Okay, I think there were 7 altogether, so let's just gently turn this over. And here she is. What a beast. Right, I think I'm probably going to need to remove some of these knobs as well, if not all of them. Do these come off as well? Yes, they do. Right. Going to put those in a little pot to keep them safe. Right, so, nice. What's tied on there? Oh, nothing at all. Fantastic. Oh, look how filthy that is, though. Oh, my word. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. That's hanging in there. That really is. Oh, all that stuff. I don't even want to touch it. Oh my word, that's just gross, man. Okay, right, we are certainly going to be able to get in here and give this tuning window a good clean. Oh my lord, that is gross. Ugh, I mean, look at it. Filthy. Yeesh. And I've got to say, the inside doesn't look much better. We'll take a closer look in a second. But at least it is going to be easy to reference what all these different pots and switches are, because we can read them directly off the faceplate just there. So that'll be quite nice. They'll all need a good clean anyways. But with regard to the inside though, I mean, yes, it is absolutely filthy. I mean, look at that cassette mech. Oh my word. I don't think I've ever seen one quite so horrible and gunked up. And the speakers, I think if we turn that on now, we just pump the room full of dust actually. So, oh, and speaking of speakers, they are literally loose. That's interesting. So they're basically held in place. They've got little retainers on the inside just there, and then, yeah, look at that. Cool. Right, so, will they reach? Oh, hang on. Just about to the edge. Right, okay. So, what have we got then? We've got the power supply just over on this side, with the main fuse just here, a T1.6 amp. So that looks all okay. Well, we know the power supply works anyway, and the battery contacts all look good. And then the radio board this side, so we've got the ferrite rod antenna just there, the tuning cap and the IF stages. I can see a semi-variable resistor just down in the corner. So that will be where we want to adjust the pilot signal just to tweak that FM stereo. So then here's your various mode switches and what have you, and then your tone and your volume part. And that volume part, as I say, is probably linked to some extra circuitry because the loudness is built into that as well. But fortunately that all works. So yeah, so there we go. Well, the cassette mech, I've got to say, looks okay. Apart from being absolutely filthy, I think all the parts are there. I don't honestly think anybody's been in here before, so There shouldn't be anything missing. The counterbelt, gosh, that counterbelt is so old, it's actually brown. It's not even black. Oh man, I've never seen a belt quite so obviously elliptical and brown before. So that's okay, we'll get a new one on there anyway, that's great. As for the main belt, well, the motor's just under there. Let's have a look. I'm just gonna, it's hard actually because these speakers are still attached, so it's hard to try and lift it and look underneath. But can we see anything? Not quite. Not quite. So just gonna have a quick feel under here. Alright, well, I can feel the motor is actually turning. I can rock the spindle. I can rock and there we go. There's the belt, he says, that black splodge. So yeah, there it is, look. Nice. So this is going to be a bit messy on the other side. However, all good, I think. So that's okay. I'm quite happy with that. And in terms of getting the mech out now anyway, apart from all my yipping on here, basically there's 4 sort of rose, well, pinky anodized screws. I reckon we get them away, whole thing should just come out. So with that, I'm going to go and get something to start cleaning my hands up. I've got a feeling this is going to be a messy little job, and we'll go from there. Right, so let's get this mech out then. So as I say, I think it's going to be these 4 screws just here. Now that, ladies and gents, is the sound of a screw that's never been out before. I love that kind of clicking sound. And again. Got to be a bit careful actually, because I think over the decades, and many decades, the plastic's probably moved, warped. So things are a little bit wonky, kind of unscrewing in an eccentric pattern. But anyway, there we go. So 4 screws out of there, all the same as each other, so that's nice and easy. So just make a note of any cables that might be running in the area, just so as you know where they've got to go next. It's always worthwhile just taking a few photos of where the wiring looms go. Just helps reassembly. Right, let's have a look. So this speaker cable can go all the way over there. We don't need that for now. Looks like there's a multi-plug for the heads. There's a multi-plug down there also. So there we go. So I'm going to very, very carefully remove those 2. There's one away. I'll get you some better visibility in a second. There's one just down in here which is a little bit tricky to get to. There she is. Okay. Right. So basically, once we've taken the screws out of the back case, there were literally 4 screws for the mech and 2 multi-plugs, and the whole thing's away. Could not have been easier. And also, what's a bonus treat for this one is, in some of my videos, regular viewers will know I often marvel at the fact that we get black smudges on our hands from what was left of the belt, but 95% of the belt usually disappears. Seems like it's been very kindly left behind. In this particular instance, there's various pieces. Also a tiny little bit of black plastic, which is a worry. So I'll definitely keep that to one side. But yeah, there it is. Lots of little bits of broken belt tucked away in all that dust. Right, there we go then. You can actually get a better view of the board as a whole now. And I can get to the switches and clean them much more easily. And that's all great. Right, okay, well let's take a look at this cassette mech then, see what we're in for. So here's the mech in isolation then. So we've got the erase head here, obviously the record playback head, and then the pinch roller, which is turning quite freely, the capstan, which is filthy, and yeah, the spindles are turning nicely. You can see the motor just there. Now, there's no adjustment as such on the motor itself, but interestingly the motor supply line does have a resistor and a cap there for smoothing the power supply built into there on that tiny little board. Right, okay, it's all geared, which is quite cool, so we haven't got to worry about too many idler tyres and stuff like that. That's nice. There's your chrome plated plastic just there, and it tells us pause, fast forward, play, rewind, record and stop. So if we did want to remove those, at least we'd know for sure which ones were from where. But I think we'll be alright cleaning them in situ, to be honest. Right, there's the remnants of the belt around the motor mounting points just there, and around the spindle. And indeed we've got a fair bit of belt around the flywheel itself as well, so we'll have to clean that up. In terms of the belts then, it looks like there is literally just the two. So we've got the counter belt that runs across onto here, and then if we turn that over, the main drive belt, it's literally just going to come off the top pulley surface of the flywheel over the motor, and then the transfer will be done via the mechanism, via the cogs, so we don't have to worry about any sort of transfer belts or intermediary belts or anything like that. Right, okay, so in order to measure up for the belts then, what we will do is get these two screws off. Interestingly, as I said, one of them is mounted via the power supply, as it were, to the motor, or at least a smoothing supply. There's a resistor there that's onto a little spade that one connects to, and then the other screw has a spring that comes across from the pause button just there. So we'll get both of those off, give them a good clean, then we can get the belts on order and then clean up the rest of the mech from there. Oh, and also February 27th 1981. There we go, so that answers that question about when it was dated from. There we go. Don't lose the little brass bushing that sits inside of the, there you go. We'll keep that all safe. And then the flywheel should come out with a little oil retaining washer on the front side, if there is one. Doesn't appear to be. Ah, this one's geared. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. There's your little geared flywheel. Nice. Ah, okay. We don't want to lose that little washer either. So we'll give this a decent clean. I'll go and scrape all this out now, polish it all up, drop it back in loosely, measure up for a belt, and we'll come back from there. Okay, well I've just cleaned the flywheel just there, and also the pulley for the counter wheel, and indeed the motor spindle, which will go in oil at some point, but I haven't cleaned the mech yet. This was really the object of this exercise, was to get to the stage where we can just get everything safely and sensibly running on here so we can measure up the belts. Now in terms of the belts, you can either, you know, if you're doing a load of these, obviously you'll know this anyway, but you can kind of, if you've got decent belts in stock, I mean here's just a few of the hundreds of different sort of belts that I keep for different sizes, dimensions and what have you, but you won't necessarily have those, especially if it's just a hobby or if you've only got one unit of your own that you're working on. And what I always suggest in that instance is to actually just treat yourself to a cheap set of sort of multi-pack belts. You can get them for about like £5, maybe $6 or $7, and then you've always got them to hand. You can use them for measuring up the belts till you get the one that feels like the right size. Then you can measure that one and use that to go and order a more reliable, decent quality belt if you wanted to. And I'll just show you now how I would do that. And so again, I keep in stock, you know, I've got, I don't know, loads and loads of flat belts there. I've got larger flat belts in here, square cut belts. I've got 4mm flat profile, 3mm flat profile, small square belts. There's probably about 1,000 belts there of different sizes and descriptions. Plus I also keep a bag, and I should think there's probably about 1,000 belts in here as well, which is just some of the belts that are left over from other things that I've been working on. For example, even this one that's just come off the counter belt today, I'll probably put that in the bag as well, because you never know what might actually get you out of a bind, or at least be one that you can measure up. So as I say, I'm sat on probably a couple of thousand different belts here, and one of them will no doubt tell us what we need. So for that instance, in fact, let's just start with the counter belt first. So we'll just go and find ourselves a medium size or fairly long square cut belt for that. And then I'll just go into my large, what we call square cut profile belts, and grab a handful of those, like so, and basically just try a few until you get one that you're happy with. And as it happens, of course, we've already got the existing one in this instance. Now, you wouldn't normally have that, but of course you can use that therefore as a guide, which is even better. And then if you want to measure the actual size, you can always, if you've got a vernier caliper or maybe a metal or a decent quality ruler that you can figure out the size, that's about a 1mm square cut belt, which is what we'd expect. And yeah, you just try a few different sizes. For example, I could say, you know, here's one, and you go, well, that's going to be blatantly too big. Or you might have one, for example, that's the opposite problem, and it's just too small and too tight. But then, a bit like Goldilocks, you should find one eventually that's about the right size. And I've just closed off one of the windows there. I think the daylight was getting in a bit too much. We were enjoying the first bit of spring sunshine, but it's interfering with the video a bit. But you can see that the belt isn't too tight there. It's biting though. If I hold one or other of the spindles, you'll find that it won't turn, not unless you use excessive force, which means that it's biting quite nicely, which is what you want. But you don't want the belt so tight that it's going to actually kind of add extra load to the system. There we go. So that's perfect. So I'm proper happy with that. And then I know I could go and then just measure the belt across there and order a decent quality one. Actually, counterbelts don't tend to be so critical, but obviously if you're working on a better quality system, then you want to use belts that are precision ground, that don't, you know, give you too much wow and flutter or anything like that. Right, anyway, I'm happy with the counterbelt, so that's great. The next thing I'm going to do then is go back over here and measure the main belt, and that'll be the same again. So I'll just put the flywheel back in. It fell out while I was doing the counter belt because the keeper plate hasn't been screwed back on yet. So we'd just do exactly the same thing again basically, and we'd say, okay, well there's the belt, and I can see straight away that that's too floppy, it's too loose, it's no good. So we look for a smaller one, and eventually you'll find one that's about the right size, like so. And you'll see that moving the flywheel actually turns the motor spindle, and conversely turning the motor spindle will move the flywheel. Not too tight though, it's not binding, but if I hold both spindles together and try and rock them, they're not sliding, the belt's not slipping, so I'd be happy with that. And there you go, that's the size then that I would go for to go and order up a decent belt. Simple as that. So while that other belt's on order then, I'm just going to start making a bit of a clean up on the Mech, but in no particular order. I'm just going to start with this idler rubber, purely because it's basically the only one on this side. So I'll just get this cleaned up a little bit. And then just start to clean up some of these sliders. We'll lubricate these again a bit later. Just want to get the worst of it off. The cogs are all turning nicely though, the gears are all turning. So that's good news. Sometimes they can actually be dried up on the insides as well and have to all be taken out and cleaned, but we're okay. Also the leaf switch there for the actual power to the motor is working nicely. That's nice and clean, that looks good. I think we're going to be okay overall. I think it really is just kind of dust and grime and what have you. So speaking of which, we are about to turn it over and do the worst of it. But here we go. Right. Ugh, this really is quite something, isn't it? Look at this. I mean, that's grisly as you like. Ugh. Well. I think somebody lost their cat in here, I think. Ugh. And there's the normal gratuitous shot for my girlfriend, who absolutely delights in this. Not. Right, but anyway, I'm going to keep going on. Just going to keep clearing away, get rid of all the loose dust and everything, and then we'll go and sort of clean things up a bit more properly, as it were. And still it comes, there's more of it. And then we'll just clean the heads. Haven't totally finished with the mech itself yet, but got to a stage where I wanted to just get in here and clean these up. I've got to say, they're coming up really nicely. I think we'll be okay. A great opportunity to get into the transport buttons and everything as well while we can. It's not perfect, but we've certainly got, you can see now, the dust, the grime has gone, the heads are clean, the capstan will be clean when we put that through. But yeah, the pinch roller's nice and clean. And basically we're pretty much in a position where we can start putting it back together once the new belt arrives tomorrow. So just going to give this a bit more of a polish, just getting to the nooks and crannies that you wouldn't normally be able to get to. And then a little bit of a drop of oil on the actual transport mech on the sliders just here, and then we can put that to one side, and that's the tape deck pretty much done. And we'll just give the capstan a quick clean, get it squeaky clean like that, and that'll run nice and true once we put it back in. Of course we won't put it right in now because we're waiting for the new belt to come, but we can set that to one side and that'll be lovely. Okay then, so while the mech is almost ready for the new belt, we may as well crack on and see if we can fix this FM stereo. So we've got a slightly weird Heath Robinson lighting setup here. The studio lights actually interfere with the FM quite a lot, so we can't have them on. Plus also, we need to be able to see these lights just here. You can see the battery light is on, and at the moment the tuning light is on as well. So if I turn that off and back on, you can probably see that going on and off, back on. But there's no FM stereo at the moment, and we are in stereo mode. I'm just going to turn it up a touch. There we go. We've got the indicator light for tuning strength there, and then it's off and on, but no FM stereo. So what I'm going to do is just tune using this tiny little variable resistor down here, but I'm just going to gently turn this until we've got the FM stereo light on. It's extremely difficult to get to down there, I've got to be honest with you. And there we go. So you can see now we've got the FM stereo light coming on and off. Let's find another station. There's one. Off. And on. And off. And on. And on again there. Good. So I'll just get the lights back on and explain what we've just done. So hopefully some of that came out okay. Basically what I did is I hooked up 9 volts DC directly to the battery terminals here for 2 reasons. One, I'm working right in amongst this and it's very easy to catch yourself on the live 240 volts or 230 volts here in the UK on the mains power, which we don't want to touch. So when you're working inside, if you can, always work directly from a regulated power supply of low voltage. As it happens, those battery terminal connections are actually mounted quite awkwardly underneath there, so they're not readily available to tap into directly. So I just connected some power up to the battery contacts and that's great. Also tells me as well that the batteries would work if there were batteries in there, which is fantastic. But anyways, from there all I did was just make minor adjustments to the variable resistor there for the pilot signal for the FM stereo. Now you can do it sort of properly, as it were, within the oscilloscope and chase the actual frequency counter to get the exact wavelength that you're looking for. But essentially at 19 kilohertz, you've got a reference signal for FM stereo to work properly, and how the chip kind of works that out is based on that reference signal that's coming in here. But over time it can drift very slightly, and if it's just a tiny bit out of whack, it doesn't calculate correctly and it won't recognize or reference or demodulate the signal. So essentially you won't get FM stereo, you'll just get the mono signal. And all I did then was just basically just tweak that there until it pulled it in and you could see the FM stereo light come on. It's just a minor little tweak, and then we had nothing, then we tune it, then we get the FM stereo, then it would move and then come to a next channel and you get your FM stereo. So that's kind of a Heath Robinson way of doing it, but it does work, so that's great. We've sorted that for now. So yeah, where are we at? We just need to give everything a real good clean, don't we? So the radio's working okay, I'm happy with that. The cassette mech is all cleaned and ready to go, and obviously we haven't checked the amp stage or anything like that yet, but once we get the belts tomorrow we'll get them on, put it all back together and have a listen to that. So I think what I'm just going to do now is give the inside of the case and these very dirty speakers a bit of a clean, and that'll probably be it for today. I think tomorrow when the belts arrive we'll get that in and also give this top casing or the front casing an absolutely decent deep clean and a scrub, and hopefully it'll all be working. So let's just have a quick dust up and I'll see you tomorrow. Quick fade to black here and we'll take a little breather. Rightio, so just while we are waiting on the cassette mech then, I think it's time to give this thing a whole decent clean. You can see there's fluff and dirt and grime and literally decades of nastiness all over this, but as I said at the beginning of the video, all the knobs and the switches are present and there are no real cracks or anything like that in the casing. It's actually in fairly good condition overall for its age. So yeah, I think we'll really be able to clean this up quite nicely, to be honest. So what I'm going to do, I think, is just get it all apart, which I've pretty much done anyways, but I think we'll probably just get rid of this this cassette door as well. So that'll allow us to get in there properly into all the nooks and crannies in there and really do it justice. So to that end, amongst all this fluff and general nastiness, we should be able to get this door away. So I see there's a couple of screws here. One's got the retaining spring for the door, so I'm going to peel that away gently there, and I think I will get this one away, this bracket. I don't know if I need to or not, but God, that's so grimy in there. And okie dokie. And for my own reference, there are 4 little holes in there, and the spring is in the 3rd one down. I'll also get rid of this one as well. And then hopefully we should be able, there we go. That's going to be a lot easier now. We can get in there, give this a gentle clean, polish it all up. Yeah, I reckon we'll be okay, because it'll allow us to get right in there now and literally get rid of this. So apart from the tuning window, which is literally heat welded into the chassis there, everything is off and we're ready to go. So I won't use anything too abrasive, but I'm going to get in here anyway, give this a proper decent clean, and I'll be back shortly, and hopefully things should look an awful lot better. And just while I'm at the stage of cleaning the rear casing out, now would be a good opportunity to clean the switches as well. So I'm just going to take the switch dust covers off. I'll clean those separately, and just clean some of the goo from around the pots and the switches. There's no point working all this dust and hair and grime into them, so just a cursory clean up across the top there, and we'll go ahead and just clean and lubricate the switches now. Good stuff. Well, it's work in progress, but that's an awful lot better. I've also glued down the orange label there as well, which had come a bit loose, and polished up the screen on the cassette door. As you can see, by removing it, it really does let you get into all the nooks and crannies. I mean, this thing was absolutely grim before, and it's all ready to go back in now. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in and finish polishing it up, and then we're just waiting on the belts. Okay, I've done pretty much all I can for a minute. I've given everything a proper strip down, a deep clean. I even had the faceplate out in the sink and gave it a good scrub. I've had the cocktail stick and various lotions and potions and cloths in all of the nooks and the crannies there. I've also cleaned up all of the knobs there, all the controls, they're all looking gorgeous. T-cut the cassette door and also the tuner window. Polished the aerial as well and the chrome end caps, so you'll see those in the reveal a bit later. Yeah, just really gone to town on it. Obviously it's not perfect, this is 40 odd years old and it's got a few scuffs and scrapes and what have you, but I'm super excited to be working on this one. It's been on the shelf looking at me for far too long. It was absolutely filthy and it already looks like a new machine. So all we're waiting on now is the belts. We'll get those in, get them into the mech, and it won't be long now before hopefully this baby will be up and running again. Okay, so the belts have arrived. So we've got two, if you remember. We've got a counter belt and we've also got the main drive belt as well. So here we go then. Very similar in size in the end. One was slightly larger than the other. But there they are. Okay, so the larger one was the counterbelt, so we'll just get that on first while we're here. That's it. And you'll see as I turn the spindle, so it advances the counter. Marvellous. Good stuff. Okay then, so the main drive belt for this one, we just want to gently locate the flywheel into position there, and hopefully that feels good. Lovely, happy with that. Right then, so get this cover plate back on, not forgetting the bush of course. And remember there was a grinding point on that one, and then the spring onto this one. Good stuff, right. Yep, just the right amount of end float as well on that. Although that's pretty much factory preset, I think, anyway. Good stuff then, there she is. Right, let's get it back in then. So we're back at the main casing now. We've cleaned and lubed all the switches and the sliders and what have you. Everything's all nice there. Also cleaned out the case and also got all that detritus off of the speakers as well, and just gently tidied up the speaker cables. So I think we're good to go now. We just need to get this mech back in, and I think there were just the 4 screws, weren't there, and 2 multi-plugs. So I'm just going to try and get those in now. Rightio then, here's the exciting part. This has been stored for many years, and I've probably had it a couple of years myself. Absolutely caked in filth and grease and grime and dust and cobwebs, and we've serviced the mech and just put the 2 new belts on. So this will genuinely be the first time that we have tested this. Here we go. Does it work? Yes, it does. Happy days. Right, let me just try and rewind it. Beautiful. Look at that counter going. And fast forward. Nice. And play. Awesome. That's got a real beautiful spring to that mech actually. It's really nice. It's positive. It's playing brilliantly, and the tone sweep on that was excellent, I just noticed. Fabulous. Alright, well let's get this top cover back on and get the knobs and switches on, and time for a final reveal. So here it is then, the Toshiba RT-S702D. I'm super happy with this one, I really am. I mean, I know it hasn't cleaned up the best in the world. There are some scuffs and scratches and wear for its 43 years of age. But you know what? I couldn't be happier with this. I think it's fantastic. I bought it because it looked really quirky and unusual, and it's a rare old beast. I knew nothing about it at the time, and I just thought, you know what, at some point that'd be a great little stereo. And it's sat on the shelf for a year or two, and it was covered in dust. I'd inherited it with all sorts of dirt and grime, and if you remember, inside the cassette mechanism was just loads and loads of dust and grime and dirt. All the switches were filthy, and yeah, I mean, we tried to play the tape, didn't we, and the belts had disintegrated, so we could hear the motor running, but that was as good as we were ever going to get. On top of that, whilst we had the first glimpse of FM stereo at first, it did actually disappear, and we found out that the tuning had drifted a bit as well, so we couldn't get the FM stereo either. So essentially it was filthy dirty, the tape player wouldn't work, and the FM stereo wasn't working properly. So what did we do then? Well, first thing was cracked it open, had a good look, we cleaned all of the internals, we cleaned the casings themselves, lubricated and cleaned all of the switches and the potentiometers, and also tweaked the pilot signal for the FM to bring the FM stereo back. In terms of the cassette mech, we've given that a proper overhaul. It really was filthy, so we've given that a degrease, got all the gunk and the goo and the cack out of there. Cleaned it all up, cleaned the capstan, the pinch roller, the heads, fitted new belts, both the counter belt and the main drive belt, both with precision ground belts, so that will keep them going nicely for a long time to come. Also, by removing the cassette door, we could get in there and give that a proper clean, and I've got to say, everything's just had a decent de-grime, and I think it looks fantastic, to be honest. So all that remains then is to give it a quick test. And to that end, I'll just try the radio with the lights out so we can hear the FM. And we'll switch to radio, turn that on. And you can see the stereo light is actually on now, which is great.
Sounds of scenic St. Lucia to the buzzing beach bars of Barbados.
In fact, I'll just turn the microphone round so you can hear the actual quality.
For your chance to win your own P&O Cruises Caribbean holiday for two, head to heart.co.uk.
Do you and your mates need something to look forward to that won't break the bank?
There's nothing else
Right now.
And loads to do. Dale?
I love just a phone song.
There we go, so that gives you an idea of the radio itself, and we'll get the cassette on now, have a little listen to that real quick. Let's get the lights back on. Okay, so now we've got it onto cassette then, so we'll move it to tape, and look at that for a cassette mechanism, lovely. And here we go. And fast forward. Rewind and play. Fantastic. What else should we have? A little bit of mic and the mechanics, just what we've got to hand here, so I'll turn the microphone around again. So that sounds fabulous. I'm really pleased with that. I wish I could play you more, but you know how it is with the content match. So yeah, there she is, the Toshiba RT-S702D. Just brilliant. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's cleaned up amazingly well considering the mess it was. The tape player is working absolutely perfectly now. The radio is spot on. The controls are sweet. The tone control has a real good bypass on there from like low to high frequencies. The stereo's working well, and yeah, the volume's just smooth and crackle free. I'm just super pleased with it. So yep, that's a win, and I'm delighted that we finally got round to doing it. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon. But in the meantime, stay safe and all the best for now. Bye bye.